I went to an aunt's house once and she made me a fried egg but didn't baste it. There's nothing I hate more than undercooked white, and she was really mean and made me eat the whole thing. And then after that I didn't eat eggs for like years. It took me a while to recover. She doesn't know who I'm talking about. Like those kinds of aunts never think it's them. Hi, I'm Sohla El-Waylly at the New York Times Cooking Studio, and this is the first episode in a series of 7 where I'm going to teach you a bunch of culinary basics so you can be better in the kitchen. Welcome to my cooking school, but it's free, no debt. Today we're going to talk about eggs, and I'm going to show you all of the ways to make the best perfect eggs. We're going to do fried, we're going to do sunny, boiled, scrambled, frittata, every kind of like basic egg technique you need to like enjoy breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I went to the store and I got a few different types of eggs. When you look at the egg section in stores now, there's a lot of options. So first of all, eggs come in varying sizes, anywhere down from peewee to jumbo. What you're gonna see in most grocery stores is medium, large, and extra large. And then there's a lot of other labels. And the fact is most of them don't mean a whole lot, but it's kind of good to know where they're coming from. So natural, that's a marketing term that doesn't mean anything. All eggs are natural. Organic eggs, that means that the chickens have been fed an organic feed and are antibiotic and hormone free. And then there's a whole set of terms that indicate to you a little bit about how chickens are living. So a very conventional, affordable egg. Those chickens are often in battery cages. They are given a lot of antibiotics. So to level it up, we got cage free. That means that the chickens are not living in tight cages, but it also doesn't mean that they have access to outdoors or that they have a lot of room to move. It just means they're not in cages. Free range means that the chickens have continuous access to the outdoors, but how much space they have and how often they're actually outdoors isn't clear. It's not a fully regulated term. Pasture raised means that they spend the majority of their life outside, but once again, it's not a fully regulated term. When you see a carton that's labeled either certified humane or animal welfare approved, that's when you know that a third party has been in there to really check and see that the chicken's standard of living is high. So that's when you can make sure that they're truly pasture raised, that they're actually outside, that they're actually eating grubs. But another thing to keep in mind is certified humane, pasture raised, organic egg is very expensive, so do the best you can. Just go forth with this knowledge when you go shop for your eggs. So what's the difference between a white egg and a brown egg, or even this beautiful blue egg? It's really just the genetics of the chicken. It doesn't affect the flavor. It's no reflection of what they were fed or how they lived. And like we're at a store right now where all the eggs are brown because it's just the egg that people are into right now. It's just the hot new egg. But honestly, it doesn't matter if your eggs are white, brown, or blue. In the US, we store our eggs in the fridge. And in most of the world, you store it at room temperature, which I know it's like a controversial thing. It really throws a lot of people off. But the reason why we store our eggs here in the fridge is because they're washed. So eggs naturally have a membrane on the outside that protects it. Eggshells themselves are actually porous. Whoa, I know, wild. It looks solid, but it's actually porous. Because it's porous, bacteria can penetrate into it once the egg cuticle is washed off. So if you get your eggs somewhere else in the world, it's likely that the cuticle has not been washed off, and you can store it at room temperature. All of our eggs here are washed, so it's best to store it in the fridge. However, eggs that are stored in the fridge do last longer. So even if you get an unwashed egg, it might be a good idea to store it in the fridge just to increase the shelf life. Between the shell and the egg, there's another membrane. Knowing that you have that membrane can be helpful when you're boiling eggs, because if you pop it into boiling water and then into ice water, it relaxes and contracts and makes it a little bit easier to peel the egg. So it's just good to know that it's there. It doesn't affect anything. You're not gonna eat it. It comes right off when you peel the egg. And then you've got the yolk, which has a lot of fats and vitamins. And then you've got the white. The main thing to know about the white is not one consistent mass. It has alternating layers of thick and thin white. That's just to give it more cushion, when things are jostling around, to protect that baby chick and also protect that yolk and keep it nice and centered. That's why when you go to beat an egg, It actually takes like a minute to thoroughly mix up the whites, especially the fresher your egg is, the higher ratio of thick white you have. The majority of the vitamins and nutrients in an egg are actually in the yolk, while the white is like this protective cushioning for the chick. So it's kind of like, I have a baby chick right now, and it's surrounded in amniotic fluid. So the white's almost like that amniotic fluid, kind of like protects it, buffers it, but it also gives it protein and water while it grows. It's a very like beautiful thing when you think about it, how it's designed to have like everything necessary for life. So what a great way to start your day, with a couple of eggs. We're gonna start with a simple, fluffy scrambled egg. It's gonna be a little bit higher heat and you stir it a bit less. The next scramble, which is gonna be very creamy, we're gonna go for a low heat, constant whisking, and you get like a custardy texture. But it's really interesting how just by changing the temperature a bit, you can get a totally different texture, because eggs are incredible. I always like to crack my eggs on a flat surface, like the counter. I find that when I crack it up against the rim of the bowl, it's very likely to like lose a bit of shell into the eggs themselves. Now, I like to salt my eggs in advance. Old French chefs love to say not to salt your eggs in advance because they think it'll dry it out. But really what's happening is it looks like it's becoming watery because it breaks up the egg white a little bit, changes the way light reflects it, but chemically, at its core, it will make your eggs more tender. You can actually salt your eggs up to 15 minutes in advance for a creamier scramble. I'm using Diamond Crystal Kosher, which is fluffier salt, so it might look like I'm using a lot, but it's actually like a less salty salt. And I go for like an even sprinkle across each egg. Whisking your eggs actually takes a little bit longer than you think. You need to take your time, break it up. You can see I just scrambled it for a moment now, and there's lumps of white floating around. That's gonna lead to like kind of a dry scramble in places. Okay, so it took a minute. It's really nicely whisked up. If you want these to be like extra fluffy, you can add a teaspoon of milk per egg, but I'm gonna go just butter today. For these eggs, we want them to be fluffy, so we're gonna cook it at like medium heat. I'm using a non-stick skillet here. It just makes it a little bit more foolproof. I know my pan's hot because my butter's nice and foamy, and I'm gonna add my eggs. You don't scooch them around too much. We're just gonna do like a gentle fold. The edges set faster than the middle, and you just kind of fold them in. It happens pretty fast. And it will continue cooking from the residual heat, so you take it off while it's still just a little bit wet. Finish it with a little pepper. Now we're gonna do a creamy, really luxe restaurant style scramble. We're gonna go over low heat, whisking constantly, and it's gonna give us like a custardy texture. So the fluffy scramble is like your everyday scramble, and this is gonna be more like Sunday breakfast. It takes a little bit more time, a little bit more care. So we're gonna start the same way, seasoning up our eggs, and we're gonna whisk it thoroughly. Now we're gonna use a saucier. This is my favorite pot. I brought this from home. What's great about it is it has sloped sides. You don't have to use this pot. You can use a regular saucepan, but you don't want to use non-stick because we're going to be whisking in here constantly, and a non-stick can't handle the whisk on metal action because there's no corners. You can really get in there with the whisk. If you have a regular saucepan, no problem. Just make sure you like really pay attention and get into the corners. 2 eggs is not a lot, so you can just lose all of your egg into the corner and have like nothing left to eat. So we're gonna go low heat here, starting the same way with a little bit of butter, and we're gonna wait until it gets nice and foamy. Eggs going in, and now we're gonna whisk the whole time. So this does take a little bit longer, but it's Sunday, you have time. The main thing at this point is you wanna keep it moving, and you're gonna keep whisking until you see some teeny curds kind of suspended in some like creamy situation. And I know like some people, when they see these eggs, they think they're undercooked. I promise you, they are fully cooked. The texture is just different because of the constant motion. So you can see the eggs are getting thicker, a little bit foamy. The whisking is also like adding a little bit air to it, which adds to that creamy vibe. As you get closer, you have to stir a bit more vigorously because it's going to want to stick to the sides. And pulling it off the heat so it doesn't overcook. You add a little butter at the end for richness, and also it just kind of halts the cooking. And then you got to get it out of your pan pretty fast because it is such a teeny amount of eggs, so you lose that creamy fast. It's one of those things where it's like, it's taking a really long time, and then boom, it like happens really fast. I'm gonna finish this with a little pepper, and that's our teeny creamy curds. You can like level it up. Finish it with a little creme fraiche. Whoa. So here we've got our two kinds of scrambled. Same ingredients, different technique. Here we've got a forkable, quick scramble, the weekday scramble. And then right here, this is like a spoonable scramble, right? Creamy, custardy, you don't even have to chew. This is actually my favorite egg. The crispy, edged, oil-basted egg. I don't think there's anything better than this. For a crispy egg, you need to go hot and fast. That's the key to getting the crispy edges while keeping that like molten yolk. Because we need to go so hot, I don't like to use a non-stick for this. Non-sticks really aren't meant to get that hot. My favorite is to use a cast iron. Anytime you use a cast iron, give it a minute to heat up on medium heat. Cast irons retain heat well, but they actually don't heat very evenly, so they take a little bit of time to get going, but once they get there, they're like ready to roll. You know it's there when you see like just like wisps of smoke coming off the edge. And then once that happens, we need to move pretty quickly. We're gonna baste this egg, so we need a big spoon to help us baste. This is my favorite spoon. It's my favorite tool. It's got a really big head and a really squat handle, so it's really good for like basting. We're basically going to tilt the skillet and then scoop up some of the fat that pools at the edge and pour it over the egg. And that helps the top cook at the same rate as the bottom. I'm gonna crack my eggs into a separate container because cracking directly into the pan, you can get some oil splatter and you're more likely to get shells in there. We have our wisps of smoke. We know our pan's hot. Now we're gonna move quickly. I have a towel because your cast iron's hot. A couple tablespoons of oil, and then our eggs are going in. Drop it close to the surface of the pan so that you don't break your yolks. A light sprinkling of salt. Increase the heat to medium-high. And we're just gonna let it chill for a minute, let the whites kind of settle. And then we're gonna begin our baste. So we're gonna tilt and scoop and baste. For the fat, you wanna use something with a higher smoke point, so definitely don't use whole butter here. Whole butter is gonna burn as soon as it hits the pan. Okay, so it doesn't take a whole lot of basting. You can see that the white on top has set and cooked through, and we're getting some nice browning and frizzling around the edges. And it's useful to have a slotted fish spatula like this because you can drain the oil as you scoop it off. If you don't have one like this, just give it a little tap on a paper towel before you land on the plate. Just make sure your eggs like loosen from the skillet so that you don't break those yolks. So give it a little tilt to drain off that fat. And we go to our plate. Oh, crispy, crackly, a little bit of pepper. And we have the best egg, my favorite egg. This is your dinner egg. We got our nice crispy, crackly edges, really nice jiggly molten yolk. You can see it's still really nice and molten, but there's none of that snotty, runny white on top because we gave a little baste. It's a good way to like get used to this higher heat cooking. That's what's great with eggs. You can really get to know your pan and your burner and your equipment and what the smoke point of oil is and what a hot pan looks like. And even if you mess up, you're still gonna have breakfast. All right, we're gonna do sunny side egg. We want no color on our eggs, but we want the whites totally set, yolk nice and runny. That's the goal here. Same deal, I'm gonna crack into a separate container just to make sure I get no shells and my yolks are nice and not broken. You don't have to do it this way. If you feel confident, just go into the pan. Now we're back to the non-stick here, a little bit of butter, and we're gonna let this melt until it gets like nice and foamy. We're gonna go for like a medium low because we want this to be nice and gentle. And once again, we're gonna drop pretty close to the pan so we don't break our yolks and lightly season. And you can totally just like let your eggs gently cook as it is, but I like to cover it just to get it going a little bit faster. It's probably just gonna take 1 to 2 minutes. Keep an eye on it. It really depends on how cold your eggs were to begin with and how fresh they were. So a fresher egg with like a plumper white takes a little bit longer to cook through. So you can see it's already happening. Wow. Just gonna keep it going. We're going until that white is totally opaque and set, but the yolk is still sunny. Huh? We're getting closer. You can see the transformation every time you lift up the lid. So if you take a look, this one egg is pretty much there, but there's still a little bit of white here that's not cooked. So I'm putting that directly over the heat, just to give it a little bit more. This is a really good method for when you're cooking a lot of eggs, because there's no flipping required. We just put a lid on it, scooch it around. Okay, we did it. We have our sunny side egg. So you can see our yolk is still really nice and sunny, but the whites are totally set. It's really gentle. You don't want to break your yolk, so I prefer just sliding it out. A little bit of pepper. Because we had a higher ratio of that thin white, that got a little overcooked. You can tell because it's a little bubbly, but the thicker white is like perfect. We're gonna eat it all. So now we're gonna do the over easy egg. So the only difference between sunny side up and over easy is over easy, you have like a white film over the yolk, and you get that by just cooking it for a little bit longer, covered, or in a restaurant, typically you give it a quick flip. I'm gonna show you how to do it with the lid because you're in no rush. So this method takes a little bit longer, but you are less likely to break your eggs, and it's much easier when you're doing a big skillet with like 8 eggs. So I got my butter going, let that get nice and foamy. So similarly, I'm melting it on like medium-high heat, and then I'm gonna drop it down to medium-low when I pop in my eggs. Now you can just cover this and let it roll, or I'm gonna add just like a splash of water. This helps it cook a little bit faster, and I'm not adding much, maybe like a teaspoon. There's already a good bit of steam that's produced from the egg white itself. This is just a little extra. Over easy is great because you get all of the textures of a sunny side egg, like the really tender white, the runny yolk, but you are guaranteed to not have any undercooked white. Oh, look at that, and we're over easy. So this is our over easy egg. Same thing, we're gonna just gently slide it out. So you can see there's a little bit of bubblage that happens from the water, but it did cook quite quickly. And you just wanna make sure you don't end up with that water on your plate. There we go. And a little pep. So you can see the white is totally cooked. We have the really nice set film on top, but if you give it a poke, it's like wiggly, it's jiggly, it's like pudding in there. That's exactly what you want. So here's our easy over easy egg. Over hard. So this is probably the easiest egg because we're just trying to cook everything. Same deal, starting the same way. The goal here is a fully cooked yolk and fully set whites. This is the best egg, I think, for a breakfast sandwich. I mean, I love a runny yolk, but it gets messy in a sandwich. I'm going for a medium-high heat just for melting the butter. We are trying to cook through the white and the yolk, but this isn't an egg where you get much browning. So we have our bubbly butter, turn the heat down, add our eggs, a little bit of salt. If you want this to happen like really fast, you can pop the yolk and like kind of marble it in there, kind of like a McDonald's breakfast sandwich. Or you can just wait until the whites are like mostly set, and then we're gonna give it a little flip. We are like slightly less cooked than for a sunny. Now's a good time to flip because our whites are all in one, and we flip. And it doesn't matter if your eggs break because they're gonna be cooked all the way. Since we're going for over hard, we're gonna cook this until the yolks feel totally set. So they're not gonna be pudding vibes, it's gonna be more firm. A little bit of pepper, and we've got our over hard eggs. Whether it's over easy or over medium or over hard is just poke the yolk and feel how squishy it is. When it's over easy, it should be like liquid. When it's over medium, it's more like pastry cream. And now that it's over hard, it's firm and it's set. Now we're gonna boil some eggs. Pretty easy. There's just a few things to keep in mind to make sure that you have a consistent cook on your eggs and that they peel evenly. We're gonna start with eggs straight out of the fridge. All of these cook times work best with cold eggs and eggs that are large size. So if you have an extra large egg or a medium egg or room temperature egg, you may need to adjust the cook times to make it work for your egg. The key to getting the shell to peel off cleanly is like these drastic changes in temperature. So we're gonna have cold eggs going into boiling water and then going into an ice bath. You really want to think about how many eggs you're boiling to determine the size of the pot of water. You need to make sure you have enough water that when you add the cold eggs to the pot, that the temperature doesn't drop too much. And then the second thing is you need to have a big enough ice bath for the number of eggs you're going to be cooking. With an ice bath, it's really important to make sure you have enough ice so that when you add the hot eggs to it, it doesn't immediately melt and become tepid. Anytime you're making an ice bath, this is a good rule. Fill up your bowl with ice and then add your water. Like I see some people, it's like they're making a beverage, it's like mostly water and a few cubes. That's not going to do anything. You need a lot of ice. Go to the bodega, get a bag of ice. It'll be worth it. It's helpful to have something like this to help drop all your eggs in at once. Be really careful when you drop in your eggs so they don't just break at the bottom of the pan. And I want to show you the eggs at a few different temps. So we're going to pull them out every couple of minutes so you can see the difference between like a really soft 3-minute egg, and we're going to go all the way up to like 15. This is like a really simple technique, but you want to keep an eye on it because you don't want it to be boiling so vigorously that the eggs start smacking around and you end up losing a bunch of egg white. But you also don't want it to be still. So we're just gonna keep an eye on it. And I have my slotted spoon ready for evacuating. So this is gonna be our 3-minute egg. I'm gonna plunge this into the water to halt the cooking. You wanna let it stay in here for about a minute. Next egg is going to be our 5-minute egg, one of my faves. Let that cool. Now we're gonna grab our 7-minute egg. So this one I am gonna peel. So as soon as I get it under that cold water, I'm gonna crack it gently with the back of my spoon to help drive that water between the shell and the egg. That's all it needs to get going. 9 minutes is like the best egg salad sandwich egg because it's a little bit jammy at the core, but you get that like fudgy, fully set outer layer. Whack. So I just give it a quick dunk just so it was cool enough to handle, and then I whack and pop it back in. Now we're gonna grab our 11-minute egg. This, I think, is the perfect deviled egg. The yolk is gonna be fully cooked, so it's like ready to mash up with mayo and stuff. Whoops, it was a little hot. And then the last one, we're just gonna let it go. We're gonna let it go for too long, and we're gonna show you what happens when you overcook an egg. To peel our eggs, we're gonna start at the blunt end, and this is our 15-minute egg, and because it cooked for too long, this one smells really eggy. When you cook egg whites for too long, they really develop this like farty smell. It just smells like butt. Now you can see that membrane, the shell is clinging to it, but the actual egg is not. So you can really easily peel it right off. Okay, so we've got our boiled eggs, and we're gonna crack into them so we can see how the different cooking times affects the inside. So the 3 and 5 minute, these are gonna be really soft. These are eat out of the shell eggs. 3-minute egg, we have a molten yolk and like barely set white, almost like undercooked white. This is just ready for like dipping. The 5-minute egg, we have a bit more set white, still have a totally molten yolk, but the white's a little bit more cooked. It's less runny. And then 7-minute, I think this is one of the best eggs there is. Nice and jammy, totally set white, but we still have a nice molten yolk. For the 9-minute, it's like nice and fudgy. The yolk hasn't gotten into that chalky place, but everything is totally cooked. 11 minutes, we have a little bit of chalkiness around the edges, nice fudgy core. And then 15-minute, for me this is an overcooked egg, but it still isn't so bad that the white has become green. This is also a really good egg for deviled egg if you prefer a more cooked yolk, and we're not getting to that very overcooked stage. It's a perfectly acceptable egg, but it is starting to get a little eggy. So we're gonna poach some eggs now. It's not as hard as I think a lot of people think. It's just about temperature management. So I don't use vinegar or anything in my water. There are some people who say that it helps the exterior coagulate faster. I haven't found there to be a significant difference when I use vinegar and when I don't. But more importantly, when I use vinegar, I can taste it, and I don't like the taste of it. So I prefer to go just water. We want to see gentle bubblage. If it's too vigorous, it's gonna like jostle everything around and all of the egg white's gonna fall off of the yolk. With poaching, it's actually very important to strain off the thin white. If you don't strain off the thin white, sometimes you can end up with a pocket of water inside of your poached egg, which is really kind of gross. And see all of that? That would have just made like a wispy mess in the water. I'm gonna just like roll this out of here, and it's gonna kind of wrap the white around the yolk, and we're gonna give it a quick spin, and that centers the yolk. You don't want it to sit on the bottom because then it's gonna cook unevenly. So you just keep it spinning. And it takes about 3 minutes. Yes. Oh, welcome to the surface. Okay, so let's give her a little poke. That feels wiggly, but right here, where the white is, feels a little bit too runny. We wanna make sure our whites are set. So this needs like 15 more seconds. It's really close. Runny whites are always gross. There's like never a time where I'm like, oh, I'm really craving a runny white. Now let's give her another poke. So I think the first one's good. Poke here, really nice, soft, molten center. Around here, feels nice and set and firm. I'm just gonna plop this right here to drain off slightly. This one feels done too. So here we've got our poached eggs, no special tricks, just water, temperature management, and eggs. If you're poaching for a lot of people, you can plop these right into ice water. And then when you are about to serve your food, just warm it through in a gentle bath. You can hold it in the ice water for like 2 hours. So if you're gonna do a big brunch with like Eggs Benedict, always cook your eggs in advance. Just make your life easier. All right, so I showed you a bunch of things that eggs can do on their own. Amazing, but we have more. Eggs are so good with so many different ingredients. I'm gonna show you how to make a frittata with whatever you've got. Fridge clean out frittata. It's a great way to take your leftovers and like give it a new life. This is also a good way to, oh look, I have some shell. It's a teaching moment. The best way to take it out is by using the shell. The shell really wants to stick to the shell, so use the shell to scoop out the shell. A lot of frittata recipes give you a measured amount of salt because you don't want to underseason your eggs. You've cooked a lot of eggs now, right? Because you made all of those. So you know what amount of salt you want on an egg. So just like translate that to 8, 1 egg. This is actually how I do it. So if I'm making like something with like 30 eggs, I actually sit there and I'm like counting how many eggs is that. So I'm gonna whip these up and we're gonna let it sit while we get the rest of our ingredients ready, and that's gonna give the salt time to do its thing and make sure these eggs are really nice and custardy. At this point, you could add a little bit of cream. You can like level it up. I'm giving you like the basics, but you take it as far as your fridge will let you go. So you wanna add a little cream in here, go for it, a little bit of sour cream. So for the fat, you can use oil or butter. Because we're cooking at like a lower moderate temperature, you don't have to worry about the butter burning, but I decided to get a little crazy and I'm gonna use bacon fat. Start the building of flavor early on. For your mix-ins, you can get really creative. Use frozen vegetables, use cooked stuff, but the main thing to think about is how long does something need to cook? And that's gonna determine what order you add it to the pan. I've got like pretty much all quick cooking stuff, and then we're gonna warm through a little bit of cooked farro, some crumbled bacon, and some chives. Now I'm gonna add my tomatoes. Now with every ingredient you're adding, you wanna think about whether or not it needs some salt. You wanna layer on that seasoning. So cherry tomatoes, a little bit of salt. I'm not gonna go crazy though because the bacon fat already has some salt. Now I'm gonna add some cooked farro. Grains are like really fun in a frittata. They add a really nice chewy texture. We've got some cooked bacon, and I'm gonna add pepper at this point. If you're worried that you're gonna end up with a bland frittata, once everything's warmed through, just give it a taste. If this tastes good, you're going in a good direction. So everything's really hot and sizzling. You can hear the sound in the pan has changed from like kind of a wet sound to more of like a sharp sizzling. And that's how you know the moisture's cooked out, everything's warmed through, and now it's a good time to add our eggs. So we're gonna drop this temp down to like medium low, and I'm gonna add my chives and my eggs. So we're gonna start by stirring it to make sure everything's like evenly distributed. And then we're gonna kind of do this folding motion because the edges are gonna cook faster than the center. So here we're doing the majority of the cooking on the stove top, and I'm just gonna finish it in the broiler to set the top and set the cheese. This method's just like a little bit faster than if you were to pop it all in the oven, but you could also just pop it in the oven. Okay, so we got this like loose scramble here. So I'm gonna just stop moving it around. Just to speed this up a touch, I'm gonna cover it. I can never find my lid, so most of the time I use a sheet tray. Okay, so uncover, and you can see it's still a little bit wet on top, but edges and bottom are really nice and set. So now we're gonna top it with cheese and throw it in the broiler. The cheese is key, and you can use as much or as little cheese as you want. This is 4 ounces. Now we're gonna pop this in the broiler, keep a really close eye on it. It's gonna go fast, like 1 to 2 minutes. We wanna see some bubbly cheese, and then we're good to go. Wow, the cheese on the edges got really nice and crispy, kind of like a Detroit style pizza. So thanks for learning about eggs with me. I hope you go forth and crack some eggs with your new egg knowledge. I think you all did excellent today. We had a cracking good time, and you're gonna excel with eggs. There's more of these coming, so stay tuned. And if you want any of these recipes, you can find them on nytcooking.com or in the description below.